We start with that race-changed and gender-swapped hero from ancient English folklore waking up in bed beside that little Jonathan fella. And although it's a little ambiguous as to whether they bumped uglies or not, she totally apologises for dragging him and her friends into becoming accomplices to a GTA-style robbery heist. And also she could just pay her mum's bail after she was arrested for being a political nuisance and then crippled by trigger-happy coppers. And before you can say, who the frig goes to bed still wearing giant fuck-off earrings like that? We cut to that freckly ginger sheriff, using her new drones to totally track down the fancy Rolls Royce what a hero straight up stole last epi, which hilariously leads them straight to the Sherwood estate. After another one of them neon cringe opening title sequences, billionaire John Prince just can't believe the sheriff of Nottingham can't trace who nicked his motor despite having drones and cameras all over the gaff. But she says it's totally suspicious how that Robyn chick suddenly pulled 30 bags out her ass to post her mum's bail right after someone matching her height and build broke into the penthouse and stole his car. So maybe they should start there and she... Later, Robyn's little sis called Jill totally flirts with some local boy called David. And the woman who legit keeps a fucking condom jar on her kitchen counter promptly tells her underage younger sister to stop acting coy and go have fun with him already. And before you can say, someone better call Childline, we cut to the Hood HQ, where the rest of the gang totally want to spend all the money they made flogging the stolen car parts and also all the ad revenue they just got after the cringy rap video bragging about grand larceny blew up on the YouTubes. But Robyn just says, hold your horses, son, because we only nicked that car to help my nuisance mum, and not to blow it all on the latest sound equipment or subscriptions to Spotify Premium. So she suggests instead investing it in the local community, totally cheering them up a bit, by throwing them a massive party with food and bouncy castles for the upcoming Lionheart Day. Outside, Robyn then bumps into that useless lawyer chick who couldn't even get her mum off on a light trespassing charge. And after doing a bit of flirting, given Robyn revealed she was a straight up bisexual last epi, they find common ground given they both still live with their female birthing parents. Although, to be fair, Fitzwater's mum still has working legs, given she's got a proper job and doesn't just go around provoking rich white men into making them lifelong Stephen Hawking type cosplayers. Bruh. Anyway, the naughty sheriff soon turns up outside the Sherwood estate and tells the residents that she totally wants them to turn over the criminals known as the Hood. So naturally, they just lob some more eggs at the local coppers, because they friggin' hate freckly gingers with an army of high-tech drones surveilling their homes and shit. Elsewhere, after Jill and Davy Boy do some flirting of their own, they soon get detained by the local filth because reasons. And after the crafty sheriff snoops around Much's gaff yet somehow misses her number one wanted suspect hiding behind a small wall, Robyn heads out to try and save her little sis given she overheard her being captured and shit. And after another white man gets literally trashed 2 weeks in a row and maybe the writers are trying to send a message here, Robyn soon meets up with the Hood to try and figure things out. So they soon decide to use their new tech bro pal called Tuck to make said number one wanted suspect a phony fakey alibi, whilst the sheriff aggressively tries to get Jill to snitch on her sister's criminal buddies. And before you can say, maybe she's so angry because God forgot to give her a pair of boobies, bruh, Robyn totally turns herself in and she... Elsewhere, billionaire John Prince pays a visit to Robyn's mop-head mummy called Tressie, who just can't believe that the man who sent the trigger-happy cops to cripple her is now trying to buy her off with generous offers of stem cell therapy, a brand new house and $1 million of cash if she only just shuts up and stops protesting Bill 121 and his inevitable takeover of the Sherwood properties. Naturally, she totally rejects his incredibly generous offer, what any sane person would jump at the chance at. So she just says, listen mate, I ain't going to stop being a thorn in your side even though you've proved yourself so ruthless you paralysed a stunning and brave ethnic minority lady. So stop offering me chalky truffles and shut up about it already. Meanwhile, the flat-chested sheriff is totally interrogating Robyn about how she posted a 30 grand bond when she's just a simple Deliveroo driver on minimum wage. But she just says she did one of them crowdfunding things and the community all chipped in given her mum is super loved and stuff. But the sheriff don't quite believe her, nor does she believe that she was off at the park having a little cry on a small bench on the night of the robbery, so she radios dispatch to pull up the park's CCTV already, and says if you're lying to me then I'm going to go seize all your assets and totally treat myself to a fucking boob job, son. Or some shit. Also, meanwhile, the Hood gang are infiltrating the city's security services so they can have Tuck manipulate the park's CCTV, and before you can say, these are the most suspicious looking technical engineers anyone's ever seen and giant alarm bells should be ringing for this gormless receptionist already, she lets them straight in, where they proceed to remotely hook Tucky Boy up to the server room, where he then deepfakes Robyn's face over some poor sap sitting in the park and minding his own business that night. But luckily, it totally works, and the ginger sheriff is soon made to look a right mug in front of her junior buddies, and is just probably deciding which poor sod she's going to roundhouse kick in the chest when she gets back to the office.
Oh shit, not good.
Later, Robyn tells Tuck to also take down the sheriff's flock of drones already, because they're making it impossible to move around freely and also have a shit and shower in peace, bro. And after the lesbo lawyer tries to stand up to the ginger bully about doing all these bad things, Robyn turns up in a neon gimp mask to totally distract the coppers, whilst the rest of the gang take out the drone operator and totally smash up the force's super expensive fleet of flying machines, and leaving them all squashed flatter than the sheriff's chest, and also Prince Elrond's face. And we end with the gang all having a pizza party, whilst the humiliated Chief Gingernut totally bollocks her drone pilot for letting all his drones get commandeered and then smashed to bits by a gang of youths in neon gimp masks, because that's now going to eat into the department's annual budget, and she's now going to have to make some cuts, and quite possibly literally. So she tells him to sod off, given he couldn't even do his one job properly, before phoning up that super wealthy prince fella to do a trucy team up, given she's in desperate need to balance the budget and also order a fuck ton of new spy drones and shit. And that's it. That's the Abbey. Though my favourite part was when John visited Tressie in the Hozzy and said that he totally asked the nurses to go away for a bit and give him some private time to talk. And he's able to do that because he's a famous philanthropist who donates a fuck ton of money to him every year. Even though the last guy bought influence in a hospital this way turned out to be doing some pretty dodgy shit to vulnerable disabled patients on the wards.
Now then. How's about that then?
But anyway, on to episode 3. We start with a flashback, as a young boy is getting bullied by a grown man in a silly hat, until a chubby bloke with blatantly fake dreadlocks intervenes and says smacking up little black kids on a small basketball court just ain't fucking on, son. So he tells him to get lost and promptly offers the lad a hand. Turns out the pussy old cuck what loves getting smacked up was none other than that little John fella, whilst over on the outskirts of town, naughty criminal fella Guy Gisborne, and yes, this is another race-changed character from classic English folklore, is met by his right-hand man after being released from prison, along with a smoking hot chocolate lady with giant bazongas, and soon giving me a right raging lob on. After the opening titles, Robyn and Jill bring their mopey disabled mother home after she got shot up and paralysed for being a fucking nuisance in the first epi, whilst mumbly mechanic Much, aka the worst actor on the planet, and yes I do mean somehow worse than the first black elf with one facial expression from the Rings of Power, asks her Asian boss if she can work on repairing a badass motorbike so she can then maybe ride it someday. But he just says stop talking about wanting hot throbbing steel between your legs and shut up about it already. Meanwhile, said mopey disabled mother has slipped out of her new wheelchair, and instead of saying thank you when the girls plop her back in her ride, she promptly storms off in her strop. Well, rolls off I guess.
They see me rolling, they hate it.
Later, Robyn gets stopped by the local filth whilst out on a perfectly innocent bike ride, and turns out it's the naughty trigger-happy copper what crippled her mum a few weeks back. And he says internal affairs totally cleared me of any wrongdoing, bro, so don't you dare even think about suing me in the civil courts, or else I'm going to turn your whole family into stunning and brave Ironside cosplayers. Also later, that Gisborne guy turns up at the Lionheart Community Hall and says it's been 9 years, 5 months and 8 days since he was last here, yet somehow instantly recognises little John despite him now being bald and about 3 foot taller than when he last smacked him up on the local basketball court. Anyway, he says he can't believe what a state Sherwood is in, given a billionaire is after their homes and there's a group of masked youths going around robbing from the rich and bailing out nuisance activists, cause that's giving the estate a bad name. So naturally, he's totally going to restore their reputation by taking control of the area via the threat of excessive violence and shit. But unfortunately, that small Asian bloke from earlier now thinks he's a big man, and totally tries to stand up to the hardened criminal what just did 9 years in the pen, and probably just gets a gat in his face for his troubles. And Guy then gets his goon to nick their fundraising money for the upcoming Lionheart Day celebrations, and says he's totally coming back on Friday to collect the rest. Naturally, the Hood can't be having that, but little Jonathan says they're all too cucked to take on a proper G, and they need to leave it to a 6'4" black bloke with a shiny head, because he's totally ex-military and more than trained to handle this flid, given he's presumably spent years shooting up stinky goat farmers in small caves. Or some shit. Anyway, all this trauma promptly triggers another flashback for Johnny Boy, and we soon see how his beloved mentor Mr. Lionheart taught him to channel and control his anger after he was constantly bullied all the time. And Robyn soon tells the sweaty man who's totally not in control of his anger right now that rushing off to confront a raging lunatic who's strapped up with a shooter probably ain't the best idea right now. But he just says, I'm totally going to get revenge on this dickhead what bullied me as a small boy and presumably gave me a lifelong phobia of small basketball courts, so shut up about it already. And before you can say, why does everyone keep smacking up the Invisible Man on this show, we cut to later that evening, as said raging lunatic totally confronts him in the back hall of the community halls, and tries to get the bloke what he spent years victimising for shits and giggles to join his little gang at knife point.
Not a great plan.
Elsewhere, Alan waffles on about how much effort he went through to get the spare part that Much needs to fix up her bike, despite her or anyone in the audience not remotely giving her stuff.
Bruh.
So Robyn soon turns up and says she's totally got a plan to take this guy down, and little John is totally in after getting triggered and also humiliated with a small knife by his childhood bully at the local community halls. After formulating their plan, they make sure to remember to steal the grotty girl's purse, given it contains the group's gun, because luckily, turns out Guy initially went down for a weapons charge, and so can't really risk carrying it around himself despite him getting it out in public yesterday and shoving it in everyone's faces in broad daylight.
Okay.
Much then reveals that she's now fixed up the bike what was in her boss's shop, and says they can totally use the personal property what don't belong to them in the upcoming plan to sort of a crazy convicted felon.
Nice.
Later, little John visits Robyn to tell her that she better take all this seriously, because if they come for the king then they best not miss. So basically, please don't bring a bunch of pussy old arrows to a fucking gunfight. Cause although he was apparently just a gentle medic in the US Army, he's totally willing to kill his arch nemesis this time, once and for all. The next day, Robyn's mum Tressie is still moping about getting shot up by the local filth and now getting cursed with floppy legs for life, before the gang mask up and head off to confront that naughty guy, which they totally do now he's out here robbing the small Asian what tried to stand up to him in front of the whole community and now getting his hand crushed in the vice grip for his troubles. And before you can say, where's this guy's fucking parole officer already, given he was just released from prison and is immediately out here doing hate crimes against the black and Asian community? Much finally gets some hot pulsating steel between her legs and steals back the cash, and promptly leads the baddies into a dark underground tunnel where the gang of totalies had a trap for him. And the Hood soon tell him to leave Sherwood and never ever do any of them bad things ever again. But Guy totally refuses, so Robyn shoots away his floozy's purse with a gun inside before letting one loose into his shoulder. And little John soon has another flashback, and this time to the day when Guy and Lionheart had a final face-off, which soon led to the chubby champion getting capped and little John being too cucked to inflict instant karma, and thereby letting the bully thug get away scot-free with the murder of his beloved mentor. Whilst back in the present, Guy gets dragged away to safety by his big-boobied floozy, and once again warned to never ever come back. Later, the small yet ballsy Asian totally thanks the mumbly ginger for fixing up the bike and then letting a gang of mysterious vigilantes use it as an accessory to crime, and totally rewards a stunning and brave junior employee for fixing something he couldn't despite him being far more skilled and experienced in the industry by giving her the keys for a bit. Whilst the Hood then celebrate another successful felony in perpetuating black-on-black violence, and soon double down on their intent to keep doing more robberies on what they deem to be bad guys so they can redistribute the wealth to their oppressed community. And before you can say, sounds kind of like some commie shit, they upload another terrible music video to YouTube and again totally bragging about their criminal exploits. As the Loxley family soon cheer up a bit with a tub of ice cream now Gisborne's crew's been chased off. And we end with a trigger-happy cop what loves paralysing people asking a wounded guy why he's sitting in his car in the dead of night whilst penetrated with a pointy shaft. Because that's called dogging in the UK. But turns out the naughty copper ain't here to arrest him for potentially seedy sex acts in a small motor, because he wants to do a trucy team up and totally take down the Hood already. And that's it. That's episode 3. But the best part was, I mean, my favourite part was when Robyn tried to get her mopey mum out of her depressive funk by unironically asking if the immobile woman was paralysed from the waist down, fancied going out for a walk. But anyway, that's the plot and that is your lot. Considering that bell thing so you don't miss episodes 4 and 5 when they drop. Tell me if you like this show in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.